we've seen a downturn in the number of people dedicated to geospatial in a lot of government departments in different parts of Europe. And so therefore, when you go through that, you lose a lot of experience. Now, we can bring some of that back. Most university courses do not particularly cover the soft skills of management, things like building business cases, leadership, team development. And so what we've recently introduced, Banu, is a course that we call the Geospatial Leadership Certificate, and it's designed to fill that precise gap. The island of Jersey has a semi-autonomous status within the UK, as we've created an overall strategy for them based upon the IGIF, the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, which I was involved in developing for the United Nations. And we found that that's worked very well.
Hello and welcome to WGIC, the World Geospatial Industry Council. Our guest today is Andrew Coote, owner and CEO of ConsultingWhere. Andy, thank you so much for joining this conversation.
No problem at all. I'm delighted to be able to contribute.
Andy, you have such rich experience of over 4 decades in developing information systems, especially the management of location-enabled applications. ConsultingWhere is the company you founded, leverages your expertise in providing strategic IT and business advice, right? Can you tell us what brought you into the consulting world, leaving an established corporate career?
So that's an interesting question. And essentially, having spent probably 25 years in the corporate world, I'd enjoyed it very much. I worked for a large part of that time for Esri and the other part for Ordnance Survey, so public and private sector. And I had met a lot of people, and the part of the work that I really enjoyed was being able to discuss with people what they were trying to achieve, and particularly how geospatial could help them to achieve that. And so therefore the jump to consultancy was quite a natural one. And also I knew a number of other people who we now work with as associates who had a similar kind of experience and wanted to pass that on. And so we brought them together in our associate network.
Fantastic. You bring such a blend of both private and government sector experiences.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And I see that you also have deep expertise in developing and integrating business applications for both large and private customers, as we have talked about. Can we first talk about the government sector, and how have government geospatial needs evolved over the years in your experience? Since you have founded this ConsultingWhere, especially in UK and Europe?
So I think that there's been a development in the sophistication of the clients that we've been dealing with. However, what happens, Banu, I think with geospatial in particular, is that sometimes when government is looking to economize and budgets are being squeezed, that often it is the most experienced people that government lets go. That's also somewhat of the case in the commercial sector, but particularly we've seen a downturn in the number of people dedicated to geospatial in a lot of government departments in different parts of Europe. And so therefore, when you go through that, you lose a lot of experience. Now, we can bring some of that back, and that's what we try to do, is to talk about what we've developed as a team when we were in government, and help people with that. But that would be my observation, that we can't rely on the level of expertise to be consistent over a period of time. And often the problem is that you start a project with one particular person, and that person then leaves the organization for one reason or another, and it actually has quite a profound effect upon the speed at which you're able to move forward.
True. On that note, what are some of the ways and strategies governments are developing to strengthen their geospatial and geo-enabled services to the public? And how is ConsultingWhere supporting them?
So we find that the trend is for, and I think this is quite right, to bring on people who have good technical experience, but then bring them through into management roles. And that's quite a difficult transition because most university courses do not particularly cover the soft skills of management, things like building business cases, leadership, team development. And so what we've recently introduced, Banu, is a course that we call the Geospatial Leadership Certificate. And it's designed to fill that precise gap. So we're in the process now of creating the first course, which is going to be launched in March. That will be our first cohort of people. And in general, these are people who've come from a largely technical background. In order to be effective at those higher levels of management, they need to consider their soft skills, and we're looking to put together a course which allows them to enhance that.
Talking about the commercial organizations, I see that ConsultingWhere also facilitates evaluating, planning, and implementing simple web applications to large enterprise scale systems. Would you like to cite a recent example or a successful project that leveraged ConsultingWare's business and technical services?
Yes, let's pick on a relatively small part of the UK, which is the island of Jersey. Now, the island of Jersey has a semi-autonomous status within the UK, and it provides a wide range of services to its citizens and also to business. And what we've been doing there is we've created an overall strategy for them based upon the IGIF, the Integrated Geospatial Information Framework, which I was involved in developing for the United Nations. And we found that that's worked very well, and it's given us an overall action plan. And once the government accepted that, I was then invited back to be involved in helping them with the implementation. So that's involved putting together specifications for the systems that they actually needed, recruiting business partners. So they can't themselves directly get to all of the sectors of the economy that could use geospatial. So they've recruited a series of business partners, and I helped them with the selection, and I now help them with the management of those business partners. But also we've instituted a recruitment program which we've helped them with, and that has enhanced their capabilities to be able to help government, particularly with using geospatial for analysis, for policy forming. And I think that's a very valuable part of what geospatial can now do. And obviously that's enhanced by having AI capabilities available to us now, which perhaps we didn't have in the past. But it's also a case of educating those people, particularly in policy positions within government, about what geospatial can bring to them creating better policies and helping decision making.
Okay, that's good to know. One of the concerns, in fact, a big concern for users, especially the commercial organizations, is the return on geospatial investments, especially in quantifying the benefits. Can you enumerate how organizations can measure the geospatial or ROI or do the cost-benefit analysis?
Yes, so Banu, one of the original reasons for creating ConsultingWhere was to actually address that problem. I'd been involved when I was at Esri in a lot of projects, which were very good projects, but the client had been unable to express the benefits of that project in a way that senior decision makers could compare with other investments. And so therefore we looked at techniques being used in environmental consulting, in financial services, to actually look at the quantification of costs and benefits. So what we've done over the course of the last 15 years is in part to build up a database of the studies that have been done around the world on cost benefit analysis and other types of economic analysis as well. And we've recently put that into the public domain as what we call the GeoVSI. So that's the Geospatial Value Study Inventory. And this is publicly available to anybody in the industry to access. And it's a short summary of all of the studies that we've found from around the world for different sectors and different geographies. So we use that as a starting point for most of these exercises. We then spend a lot of time on case studies working with the organization and their customers to understand, first of all, in qualitative terms, what are the benefits of them using geospatial. And often that's quite easy. They understand why they want to use it. And then what we do is, from our experience, we identify those aspects that they talk about of the benefits that we think we're going to be able to quantify. Some of these are around productivity, some of them are real cost savings, and some of them are additional revenues. I mean, one of the key ones for government often is that they're collecting taxes, for instance, around property, but they're not doing this in a coherent and consistent way. And they're missing revenues that, in fact, they should be able to collect. And our experience has been that this information is really valuable to the organizations, because they can then go to senior managers, present this return on investment, is often the way that we describe it. And then it can be compared in a consistent way against other projects. They may be building roads, they may be actually enhancing health services. But for the senior executives, they really need to understand that return on investment so that they can compare different options.
True. Would you like to cite a recent case study that you have done where the client has really, could see the value from these investments, from a geospatial investment? I mean, I understand if there are any sensitivities around it.
No, that's fine. Let me pick one in the public sector, because there's less problems, I think, there with anonymity being preserved. So we've done some work recently for Nottingham City Council. Nottingham City is a relatively large, I think the population is about 1 million, and there they have been involved in geospatial for a number of years. One of their big initiatives has been looking at the way in which they can employ 3D data into their work, and particularly in the planning function. And so what we did was we worked with them, and this work was actually sponsored by the ministry within the UK responsible for planning policy and planning implementation. That was very worthwhile, because we were able to engage their stakeholders in the private sector as well as in the public sector. And they pointed out a number of ways in which the planning process could actually be enhanced, and worked with us to put some financial values against those. So that was really very helpful to what we were doing. And then we looked at the internal processes within the council themselves, spoke to a large number of different planning officers, and came up with some numbers around the time that it would save them from making use of better use of 3D information. So that study has now been used in part of the launching of a national initiative. So last week we had the launch of what's called the Digital Planning Directory, which is very high on the government's agenda here, to improve the number of houses that are built on an annual basis, because it's a very big political issue. And so therefore the client was able to present this as part of the national launch. So it had a great benefit there. So that's the external benefits of this. But also he was able to take this to his senior management, and they're under pressure in terms of budgets and so on at the moment, to defend the work that they were doing, because clearly that has a cost to it, and it's been successful in that respect as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this enumeration. ConsultingWhere released a research report as well, right, on the size of the UK location market. How is this report received? And how is the demand for market sizing growing in the geospatial industry? And how is ConsultingWhere positioned to offer its services in this area?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, Banu, because the first thing you have to start with is, what's the definition of the scope? Because so one of the starting points is, what are we going to consider? Are we going to try and consider organizations that are, let's call them geocentric? They need geospatial, and we can include the military in that for their day-to-day operations, and similarly utilities. But do we also include others like financial services, and also areas of environmental management and offshore development, so marine development? And what we're trying to do is bring each of those in, but in every case you have to put caveats around the sizing that you come up with. And of course you also have this what's called the long tail of use. So you have those key users, and then perhaps many thousands of organizations in a particular geography, and we concentrate on the UK and Ireland for the work that we do. But you look at those, and there is such a wide variety that all you can do with those is to make an estimate. So you tend to look at the key players in the market. In the UK, we're quite lucky because we have a thing called Companies House, where companies with a turnover of over £1 million, that's about $1.3 million, actually have to provide management accounts on a yearly basis. So you can see what their turnover is. You also recognise that in a particular country there are different average times for payment, and so you can start looking at the debtors and creditors, which are often also published information, and you can infer from that what the likely turnover is. So that's the way in which we set about this task. We do use external information, so there are a number of companies that are data providers of information about companies, and we use them as well to validate the work that we do. But we also enhance this by conducting interviews. We have in the UK in particular, but also across Europe and other geographies, we have a good group of influencers that we work with. So we look, particularly when we're predicting forward what the rates of growth might be, we look at discussing with them where they see new markets, what they think the sizes of those markets are. Now, often they'll only do that on an anonymous basis, and so therefore we respect that. But we do have that inside track, if you like, in terms of understanding markets, and we're working in those markets as well. So that's a broad brush of how we go about this kind of market sizing work. You asked whether the demand for this is growing. I think it is, but it's still very much a niche area. You often find that the governments are getting studies done of growth in their economy more generally, and those organizations will try and just take an approach of saying what percentage of the GDP is being generated by geospatial, and then work out a number from that. So you've got very broad brush approaches, and they're suitable for certain purposes. If you want to get into the detail in order to help individual entrants into the market, then you have to put a lot more into a bottom-up approach of being able to arrive at the figures. And so we focus on bottom-up, but we also validate that with the top-down approach.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for this explanation. I want to ask you about your services to international development sector. Can you tell us more about it?
Yes, this is normally done through the IFIs, the international financial institutions, like the World Bank, but also Asian Development Bank and others, because they are the ones who are providing the loans for the bigger projects. And one observation I would make in general about this is that when we're looking at this kind of project, often geospatial is only part of it. It's very rare these days that those IFIs are actually sponsoring projects which are to do with just geospatial. It may be they're focusing on land, but I think increasingly they're focusing on infrastructure. And of course, undertaking a large infrastructure project, first of all, you need a lot of information. A lot of it's spatial to plan where you're going to place the infrastructure, but also you create a lot of data while you're actually doing the build of those infrastructure projects. So therefore, there is a growing demand there for creating spatial data infrastructures, often at a city level, but also at a national level, and that's the expertise that we've developed from previous work. I used to work for Ordnance Survey at the beginning of my career, so we have the public sector perspective on this. Is that those systems require long-term planning and a consistency of policy in order to build them and maintain them. One of the problems often for the IFIs are that they will sponsor something that's a capital project, like building of a new power line or something like that, but they won't actually fund the ongoing maintenance. And part of the ongoing maintenance is the ongoing maintenance of the data. And so therefore, some of the projects that I think are most interesting that we've done for the World Bank in particular are looking at defining sustainable business models, sustainable sources of finance. So we've done a couple of projects recently of that nature, and looking at what monies the national mapping organizations in these cases can generate themselves, but also looking at where there are philanthropic foundations where creating of certain data sets may actually help them, like the Gates Foundation around vaccinations and things like that. But also then looking at whether there are other sources of funding that they can create organically within their stakeholders. And one of the greatest examples of this, I think, is Norway, where Norway have created a structure by which they have a series of stakeholders who contribute according to the benefits that they realize from this data into a central pot of funding, and then that is administered by a body that is jointly commercial and public sector, and it decides the priorities, both geographically and in terms of how data sets are enhanced. And I think this is a great model for the developing world to consider.
Thanks for that answer, Andy. My last question to you, I wanted to ask you is, one of the big concerns for the rapidly evolving geospatial industry is the lack of geospatial professionals. On that note, ConsultingWhere is providing a range of training services, right? Can you tell us more about the trainings ConsultingWhere provides?
So I mentioned earlier, Banu, this geospatial leadership certificate. So that's focused at people coming through into management. I think there are a lot of courses being offered by some of the commercial providers and others around creating technical skills. I think one of our concerns is the pipeline. So going back right to school children and school children understanding what I think philosophically is called spatial intelligence, and being able to understand things about the world and become interested in being involved in that kind of career when they thinking about senior subjects for school and then through into university. One of the problems that we have, I think, is that the universities are, and this is talking about the UK specifically, that they haven't been very good at marketing what the benefits are of coming on their course. And so we've had an example recently where Newcastle upon Tyne University, which was where I did my training in land surveying, they've closed down their undergraduate courses. So therefore we have, I think, to help them. So that's the beginning of the pipeline, and even further back into schools, to increase the understanding of the excitement and the range of applications that geospatial can be applied to. So if I was to focus on one area, I think that's where, in order to make sure that we have enough people to deliver the potential of geospatial, that we need to bring more people into the funnel, to bring them through graduation and then into the commercial and the public sector.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Andy, for enumerating these aspects. It's always great to listen to you talking from your rich experience.
Well, thank you for the time, and so absolutely. I hope my enthusiasm has come through, and if this can then help us in a small way to grow the industry, then I'm very happy.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.